My working title, with the advice and counsel of my great friends at Bank and Tear, is How to Reboot Society and how to get that to happen in a time of extraordinary change. I'm sure that no one likes to see beautiful Madrid in this kind of condition that we're seeing today, where it's essentially locked down. The city where I live, Chicago, is the same way. Peter lives near Seattle, which was one of the first places in the country to do it. But this is what I'm calling an urgent hypothesis to get innovation to succeed instead of fail. As I promised a few minutes ago, I'm going to sort of do this in two bite-sized nuggets. And I'm going to be offering these slides up to everybody in the audience that wants them afterwards, so that you don't have to worry about taking notes. Just stay in the conversation. What I'm going to do now is condense 4 decades of work into, about 10 minutes or less. Our study of innovation 22 years ago started with a collection of things that have been extraordinarily successful in terms of changing the world, changing a category, changing an industry. We gathered up more than 1,200 such innovations over a long swath of history, more than 240 years. And we tried to determine what those 1,200 plus things had in common. We used a variety of clustering and analytic methods, but specifically discovered one day the model that you see on the screen. And what we learned is that, unbeknownst to people who were inventing breakthroughs, every innovation in history turned out to use discrete types of innovation, distinctly different from one another. And the rule of thumb, this is the principle you want to remember, is that 5 or more types of innovation in all 3 colors, broadly from a blank piece of paper, predicts a breakthrough. So the model that you're seeing here is one of the most deeply researched models in the history of innovation. In 22 years, we've redone the analysis every other year, and we found more than 80 different tools and methods to deepen these discoveries. But in very simple terms, what we can prove now with abundant evidence is that all great innovations have a sort of DNA to them, a structure. And what's important here is that when you learn to innovate this way, you get a smaller number of bigger ideas. They're easier to implement because you're quite conscious about what you have to do, and they're harder for others to copy, which is really quite elegant. I wrote about this in a book. This is not a sales pitch for the book. It's just a sort of rueful admission of stupidity, because I spent 5 years on it, and I'm sure Peter would be the first to say that's a ridiculous amount of time to spend on anything in a time of great change. So I'm embarrassed about that. There are 2,700 books listed on the topic of innovation in Amazon, but this has now become, since it debuted, the #3 all-time bestseller in the world. My students, of course, have the attention span of squirrels on meth, so they don't actually read anymore. And what I have to do is condense it down into simple stories for them. One of the ones that tends to work with graduate and doctorate students goes like this. When you want to create a profound societal change, you have 3 tests you have to pass. The first test is it has to be culturally cool, like the Black Panther movie, which when it debuted a couple of years ago was #1 in global box office for 6 straight weeks, a phenomenon that has not happened in 30 years. So that is an example of culturally cool. Great innovations, again, like what Peter does at Salesforce and in the cloud, and as he described with his 4 days to get to a cloud-based program to allocate ventilators. Great innovation has to be technically elegant. People have to be able to say, oh my goodness, how did you do that? Where's the magic? And the third test is that it has to have a perceived fair business model. So whatever we all think of Google and other tech giants today, when we first were able to search the entire world's capabilities and get, in a matter of a fraction of a second, what appeared to be the entire world's knowledge on whatever we asked about, and got to get that for exactly $0.00, that was a perceived fair business model. So fast-growing innovations, the ones that are platforms and create ecosystems and change the world, literally always have these 3 characteristics. They're culturally cool, technically elegant, and have a fair business model. Now, the way to think about that, of course, is that you need brilliant engineers like Peter creating terrific platforms shared in deep and technologically elegant ways. You've got to learn how to charge in the right way for things so that people perceive it to be fair. And you have to create a truly elegant experience. So the colors on this Doblin discovery are not decorative and not random. They really matter. And here's why. The stuff that's in gold in the center tends to be taught in engineering schools. The stuff in blue on the left has to be taught in business schools. And the stuff on the right tends to be taught in either design or social science schools. Innovation is inherently and always a team effort. And you need to learn to attract and orchestrate the talent from these different kinds of pools and get them to elevate one another's sort of points of view and skill, not compromise it down to the least common denominator. So that was, as I said, about 3 decades of research and innovation effectiveness distilled into a very tiny number of slides. It's not a fair way to treat the topic, but it is a way of telegraphing to everybody in Spain as we try to figure out how to get society to be rebooted, that there is in fact a genetic code, a structure, recurring pattern of what victory looks like. Now I'm going to do something to try to turn that into a specifically practical way to get innovation to happen. Everything that I'm going to describe now is systemic, number one. Number two, uses all the methods and tools that I've described. And number three, has already been developed from a deep structure of research and analysis. And to make it simple, what I'm going to give you is 5 linked platforms, every one of which really matters. A testing model, a testing innovation, some predictive analytic models, some contact tracing models, some cleaning systems, immunization passport, and then an adaptation system. That's what victory looks like. And I'm going to take you through those 5 innovations. But as I do, remember that every single one of them needs special methods, and they all have to be created in an integrated, seamless fashion. You cannot just sort of pick and choose the one you want. Every one of them matters. So let me take you through each of these in turn. Breakthrough number 1 is in testing. As I'm sure you all know, here in the US, we have screwed this up monumentally, okay? But it has been particularly elegantly done in places like South Korea, the place to study. Being able to do robust, secure, affordable testing in large numbers is the essential limiter of the degree to which society can be safely reopened. As you know, in South Korea, they were the first to create drive-through testing with high volumes. But what we're now seeing is that there's at least 2 important types of tests: a diagnostic test, which tells you whether or not you are presently afflicted with COVID-19. And then more importantly, over time, the antibody detection test, the serology test that tells you if you have ever had it. Both matter in any population and need to be deployable in any hotspot at any given moment. What do you do with all that testing data? You use it in predictive analytic models to tell you what's going on. You need to do that both at a population scale and in little neighborhoods where you suspect that there might be something going on. And when you're able to do that, you're able to sort of determine whether or not we're in one of those geometrically increasing curves that Peter taught us about, and what the specific interventions are that are going to cause the greatest ability to make the population safer, such as travel restrictions or closing down restaurants, especially the late night beautiful experiences that are so prized in different parts of Spain. The third breakthrough is contact tracing. Contact tracing is normally done with extremely deep protocols to be able to interview everybody in detail. As we all know, that's too slow and very difficult to scale. And so one of the things that's interesting right now is the sciences of contact tracing are being jointly developed by Apple and Google. Everyone on this webinar should know that those 2 companies normally fight against each other. It's extremely rare for them to agree to collaborate. And what they're trying to do is to create a shared opt-in ability for your cell phone to know over time who it's been adjacent to, in the way of allowing anyone that then tests positive to be able to alert others that you were nearby somebody that was a risk inside of a transmission time frame that turns out to be risky for you. Now, I believe that this should always be done in an opt-in sort of approach rather than required by society. But if we're able to do it in the right ways, it should tell you when you've been exposed to interesting risks. Breakthrough number 4 is a deep cleaning. It has to be designed by epidemiologists and executed by people who have special methods, hazmat experience, and the ability to certify afterwards that a space that they've cleaned has been cleaned in a way that is bold. Why does this matter? Because society will not trust going into a public space until such time as there's some kind of certified way to demonstrate that it has been cleaned reliably, and preferably a branded, sanctioned, independently monitored and certified way. I've listed the kinds of environments that need this kind of cleaning, and you can see it here. You'll notice that rebooting society depends on our ability to get into a rideshare vehicle or go to a shopping center or attend a museum or even go to a salon or a spa or a hotel bar when we have confidence that it has been cleaned in this way. And the 5th and final of these systemic breakthroughs will be an immunology passport. Now, the science on this is still evolving, and there's some ambiguity about whether or not once you've had COVID, you have any immunity at all, immunity for just a matter of weeks, or immunity for about 6 months to 2 years. Those are the 3 windows. If COVID-19 acts like other coronaviruses that have been studied in detail, specifically SARS, H1N1, and a distant cousin, Ebola, it's likely that you have some immunity conferred for about 2 years or more, but that is not yet clear. And what we're suggesting is that there will come a time when, on the basis of serology testing, this is the idea of antibody testing, you will be able to opt in to be able to show on your phone 2 things: a screen, which will either be red, green, or yellow, and where it's green, the barcode will pop up, frankly, whatever color pops up, a barcode will pop up so that an individual organization, doesn't matter whether it's a restaurant, a theater, a bar, your office, will be able to scan that barcode and, thanks to blockchain, be able to demonstrate that you are who you say you are. And in fact, this was a robust, secure test that actually worked. That's your immunology passport. The reason it's so important to do it in blockchain is because some of the tests so far are proving unreliable. You want to be able to turn those tests off. Other tests are, still discovering how long the immunology lasts. So you want to be able to make sure that you set rules in blockchain about sort of revealing your status in real time. Now, why does this matter? Because in my judgment, using anthropologists and social science research, what you want to lead the way with in getting people to come back out and be with one another and to celebrate life in Spain is your creative artists, your culturally resonant individuals. So the football players and the chefs and the entertainers, the comedians, ultimately the teachers, the parks, these are the things that will cause society to remember how important it is to connect with one another, to be human, to be in our pairs out in society, and ultimately to be in contact once again with the human beings that give life matter. Culture will matter more. There will be an overwhelming tendency to look at it through the lens of commerce. People will say, well, we have to get our planes flying again and our trains going again, and we have to open up businesses and shopping centers. And while that's true, the way you get society to trust the transformation and the safety is through the arts and the ways in which human beings can celebrate the idea of being connected again. Now, I have offered these slides up to everybody on the call. Just send an email to support@doblin.com and mention reboot or Bank and Tear or anything, and a smart person will send you these slides. Okay?